They only have one unifying theme, and that is they all want to destroy and they hate Donald Trump. It just makes everything so chaotic that they can say, Trump made us like this. He brought out this. He's the disruptor.
Victor Davis Hanson warns that most people have no idea about the evil Democrats planned. Moves made quietly behind the scenes that reshape power while the public looks the other way.
So sometimes they hit watermelons, sometimes they do the filibuster Cory Booker style, sometimes they make those obscene videos, sometimes they kind of go crazy, but otherwise they're not offering any counter agenda. They don't say, well, we would prefer this on the border and here's what we're going to do, or here's why we should return to the new Green Deal. They're on 30 to 40% of every issue. They don't own the House or the Senate or the White House or the Supreme Court. So they lost the popular vote and the Electoral College, first time since 2004. So I think they're very frustrated, and they've got this Jacobin radical base, and I'm not sure that's the right term for it anymore, base, because I think they've taken over the entire party, and that what you saw in Minneapolis, whether people like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or Elizabeth Warren agree with that doesn't matter because they condone it and promote it.
Victor asserts that only 3 times in the last 100 years has the out party during the first term of an administration failed to gain House seats, a rare break in the pattern of American politics.
And I guess, only 3 times in the last 100 years has the out party in the first term of administration not won House seats. And because it's so close, it doesn't mean even though they're polling as a party about 28%, they feel they can drive down Donald Trump's. I don't think the polls are that accurate. It's probably more like 50-50 rather than some of these crazy polls that have him down 10. But I think it's pretty close. But they feel that the more antics, the more hysteria that they can generate, it's kind of like collateral damage or a weapon. It just makes everything so chaotic that they can say, Trump made us like this. He brought out this. He's the disruptor. And you saw that with Tim Walz. Fallon, it doesn't make sense, but they just want to create a general atmosphere that things are chaotic, that there's no organization to anything, that we're in the middle of a tumult, and that they're going to stop that. And that's what they plan.
Every data point is a negative forum. They not only did not register as many 2 million as a Republican as an additional registration, but they lost registration.
Every data point is negative for them. They not only did not register as many 2 million as the Republicans in additional registration, but they lost registration. They're bleeding about 5 million people a year leaving the blue states.
I was going to say, and that's just in the 30 states that record voter registration.
Yes. And in addition to that, if you look at the fertility rate long term, the top 10 red states are up to 1.8 to 2, and the bottom of the 50 states down to 1.3 and 1.4 are all blue states.
Who would have thought that telling hyper-depressive ladies that they shouldn't have children or the planet might have consequences?
Yeah, that was a bad idea by AOC, but it kind of predated her. And so the long term is not good for them, and I think that is a lot of their hysterias. And they can't come out and say, this is what our agenda is, that 55% of the people want, because their base or this new young youth or whatever this group is, so they won't allow that. So I think their attitude is, I have to dissimulate, I have to be nominated. If I'm going to get a national candidate, he's got to get through the primaries. And to get through the primaries, he's got to be crazy. And then he has to have the gymnastics that he can change and go to the middle to win an election. And it didn't work with Kamala Harris. She tried that half-heartedly at times. But that's their problem.
The only other contender, like Wes Moore, maybe Pete Buttigieg, and did you see the poll suggesting, the Echelon poll, I believe, Pete Buttigieg's support in the black communities of this country is 0%.
Yes. He comes off as sanctimonious, self-righteous, sort of a elite scold. He has no charismatic appeal to anybody, and so he's not going to be a candidate. And Gavin Newsom's strategy, he thought, was to sound like the moderate candidate when he had Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. And then he realized that he would never be nominated in this lunatic party.
Victor talks about Gavin Newsom's strategy, calling it a disaster in the Palisades, where policies meant to showcase progress instead fueled frustration and decline.
So he's got this disaster in the Palisades where they haven't done anything. The whole thing was created by DEI people going to Uganda, the public works people not having hydrants at work. A reservoir was empty. They wouldn't let people clear the brush. It was a self-created disaster, and it's even worse. They won't allow them. We've got the highest taxes in the country, highest gas taxes, highest number of poor people, highest percentage.
Come on.
Goes on.
You're saying this as though it wouldn't appeal to Pennsylvania union, coal miners or fuel refiners. Man, what an absolute surprise.
So I think their only strategy is just to create so much anger and hysteria and street theater about Trump that the people will say to themselves, well, I don't know who's right, but I just can't take it. It's I'm in a fetal position. I have my hands over my ears. Just make it all go away. Maybe it didn't happen until Trump came. And their attitude is, well, it was legal to break the law and bring in 10 million. And that was an easy thing to do. But for Trump to enforce the law, that'll be amoral. And it's very difficult to find the people we let in. So we're going to stage these performance art protests against enforcing the law. And people with amnesia will not remember that we broke the law.
The Democrats have a new narrative. The left as a whole claims they are saving democracy from Donald Trump, framing him as the ultimate threat to the system.
The Democrats have a new narrative, the left in general does, that they are saving democracy from Donald Trump. And that justifies almost any means necessary to achieve the end of destroying or preventing Donald Trump from governing effectively. The problem with all of this is they are destroying democracy to destroy Donald Trump. What do I mean? One of the issues that they are agitating is the redistricting of congressional districts in Texas, in California now. And the general problem the left has is if you look at gerrymandering to make these jigsaw puzzle piece-like districts, the left is way ahead of the right. In other words, states that have proportions of 30 to 40 to 50% for Donald Trump do not have that level of representation in the Congress. And there's been sophisticated studies of gerrymandering, and it boils down to the Republicans are short some 6 to 10 seats in the House based on the proportion of the national vote they have received. The Democrats know that, but they're angry about the Texas reapportionment and gerrymandering, and their attitude is, we've already gerrymandered our states to the maximum. Don't dare try to emulate us. James Carville said that they have to get tougher. That's the new mantra. Got to get tougher, got to get meaner. Cory Booker screams and yells and throws a fit about every 3 weeks in the Senate. Hakeem Jeffries picks up his baseball bat. There's usually a video with the squad or representatives using the word SHIT or the F word. Kind of Jasmine Crockett periodically calls Donald Trump names that can't be repeated on air, but you can see the anger. And now the new idea is that they haven't been tough enough. They have been too tough. That was a complete lie. It was Hunter's laptop, we know, because the FBI had it in its possessions and authenticated. And finally, the great scandal that the Democratic Party and the obsequious media knew that Joe Biden was non compos mentis. He was not cognitively able to fulfill the office of the presidency, and they kept that from the American people until they could no longer keep it when he finally challenged Donald Trump to a debate and melted before our very eyes, sort of like the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz. he melted into a non-entity. So what Gavin Newsom is saying, I'm going to spend $250 million and I'm going to rush through the legislature dominated with supermajorities from my party. He took a natural paradise and he turned it into purgatory.
Victor Davis Hanson warns that California can't survive what's coming under Gavin Newsom.
California has been in the news recently because it's going to have an unusual redistricting effort. That means we're going to redraw the maps of our 52 congressional seats. And we're going to do that, according to our governor, because Texas has been doing that. And Gavin Newsom is running for president in 2028, so he wants to show that he is on the cutting edge of Democratic opposition to Texas. But there's a problem. Texas doesn't have an independent commission, not that they're really independent, but that in theory they are. They just gerrymander. And Texas has a underrepresentation of Republicans in congressional seats. What I mean by that, if you look at the aggregate vote in Texas for the president or for senators or for the state legislature, and you get an aggregate Republican versus Democrat vote, and then you see how many seats they have, and does that percentage represent it?
Victor Davis Hanson breaks down how Newsom's redistricting strategy mirrors Texas in name only, a calculated move designed to wipe out Republican incumbents and cement one-party control in California.
The majority, no, it doesn't in Texas. In fact, most red states, if the 50 states are ranked 1 to 50, do the number of congressional seats in this state represent the Republican or Democratic aggregate overall vote as adjudicated by either state legislature races or statewide races or the presidency or the senators? You can use different formulas, but they're pretty much the same, that red states do not that they don't gerrymander, but they don't gerrymander as effectively. So that's why Texas is taking this action to get parity. But what Gavin Newsom is doing is very strange. He is undermining a independent commission. It's been dominated by the left, but he doesn't even trust it. He's not calling it back into session necessarily.
What Gavin Newsom is doing is very strange. He's undermining an independent commission that was meant to be neutral, but has now been overtaken and dominated by the left.
He's calling a special session with a predetermined map created by Democrats to redistrict. And here's the problem. California, like most blue states such as Massachusetts or Illinois, New York, they are already heavily weighed toward Democrats. Here in California, depending on what formula we use, about 38 to 40% of the state typically vote for a Republican ticket, state or federal. And yet, if you look at their 9 congressional seats, it's about 17%. So they're 20 to 22% underrepresented. So what Gavin Newsom is saying, I'm going to spend $250 million and I'm going to rush through the legislature dominated with supermajorities from my party, a bill to turn a proposition over to the people so they will vote to suspend this already gerrymandered plan and get an hyper one so that we are going to go from 17% of our congressional districts probably down to about 8%, and we'll have 8% even though the state votes 38 to 40% Republican. So the problem is he's A, challenging an independent commission that he used to praise. B, he's taking an overrepresented Democratic congressional districts and he's trying to even more overrepresent them. And he's trusting that the people will not mind spending $250 million to have this rushed election before the next year's November, and then they will vote for it. And this will show that he is a fighter and on the cusp. But the national mood is against him because, as I said, most of the red states are underrepresented through gerrymandering, and most of the blue states are overrepresented.
What Gavin wants to do is target Republican members of Congress by redrawing districts so that 2 Republican incumbents are forced into the same seat, weakening their chances and consolidating Democratic power.
What Gavin wants to do is he's targeting Republican Congress women and men, and he thinks that he can redraw the districts and put 2 Republicans incumbent in the same district, and then one will either drop out or they'll have to run against each other and one will win, and they will be diminished by half. He doesn't care about the 40% of his own state that won't have any congressional representation. That's not on his plan. This is all the act of commission. But what is Gavin doing about the state? We've had 12 million people leave the state the last 10 years. 12 million. These were people not on public assistance. These are the entrepreneurial upper middle class. They've gone. We have the highest electric rates in the country, over 35 cents a kilowatt hour. We're the highest except for Hawaii. We have the highest gas prices. And now we have this carbon fuel formula and this new inflation-adjusted gas tax. So we're going to have the highest gas taxes and the highest actual price of gasoline. And together they're going to go up to maybe $6 a gallon. But that's not the end. He has driven out through hyper-regulation and bullying and berating oil refineries. We're going to drive 2 main ones out, and we're not going to have very many left. And if that should happen, gas could go up to $7 or $8 a gallon. Is he talking about Pacific Palisades? It essentially hasn't been rebuilt. It's completely in cinders. Why? Because of California regulations, environmental, social, equity, DEI, you name it. No zoning going on, a big fight that they want to take this beautiful Pacific Palisades historic neighborhood and have high density, low income housing in many areas, et cetera, et cetera.
Gavin Newsom is using underhanded tactics to make the already notorious system even more unfair, tilting the balance further in his favor.
Bottom line, here is Gavin Newsom using 4-letter words, expletives, boasting that he's going to attack Trump by spending $250 million to even make the notorious California congressional election map even more unfair as replied to Texas, which is it's not fair now. They may be doing something extraordinary, but they're trying to get their congressional districts to reflect their party breakdown in their state. And Gavin is doing this while he won't address gas. He won't address the flight of people. He won't address the highest taxes in the nation aggregate. He won't address electricity prices. And I just drove about 200 miles home today. I can tell you that if you get on the California freeways, such as they are, it's taking your life in their own hand. They have been on chains essentially since the 1970s, when the population was not 41 million, but about 17 million. So the population has doubled and the infrastructure is the same. And Gavin Newsom is doing what? He's doing another performance art, wiggling his head, saying the F word, the S word, trying to dare Trump to stop him, all in performance art for his next presidential run. Final observation, what he's counting on is nobody looks at the price of electricity, the price of food, the price of housing, the price of gas, on the infrastructure rate, etc. in California. Because he, more than any other Californian, as a Bay Area City Council person, as a San Francisco mayor, as a lieutenant governor, and as a governor, has ruined this state. He took a natural paradise and he turned it into purgatory. So Gavin Newsom is in a fight with Donald Trump back and forth, who issued him a temporary work permit. But I think Gavin Newsom, who champions the cause of unlawful immigrants, is going to lose that argument against Donald Trump, who tries to deport them. But more importantly, it's beyond controversy. Gavin Newsom's California issued this man a driver's license. This man was not a U.S. citizen. He was not here legally, and he could not read or write English, apparently. And the wages of that, we found out in Florida, were the 3 innocent people, and no remorse, no apologies on the part of California or Gavin Newsom. Bottom line, California is dangerous to itself in a myriad of ways, but it's also dangerous to everybody outside of California because its pathologies are not contained within its borders. But I think Gavin Newsom, who champions the cause of unlawful immigrants, is going to lose that argument against Donald Trump, who tries to deport them. And California thinks that as the home of the most illegal aliens in the country.
Victor Davis Hanson exposes what no one dares say about Gavin Newsom. California's collapse is the result of failed leadership and reckless policies.
Right now, Governor Newsom, half of all births in California are covered by Medi-Cal. We have spent almost $11 billion on indigent aid, mostly for people who are here illegally. You are now broke. Even that was not enough. You are asking to borrow $3.4 billion from the general fund, which was in arrears, to pay for the health care of people who were largely allowed to come into California illegally. More importantly, in addition to that, almost 20% of all the people who are PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric users, have not paid their bills. It's a fantastic multi-billion-dollar shortfall. What is your plan to address that? If it's to raise rates, we already pay 70 to 80% higher electric bills than any other state, and on general, higher than the average American. We're up to German territory. What is your solution to that? Recently, there have been surveys of roads and infrastructure. California is either last or among the 5 worst states as far as the conditions of their freeways and general roads.
Victor was disappointed with what happened in California under Gavin Newsom, blaming his leadership for the state's decline and mounting crises.
I'm here in California. I've been a lifelong resident of the States, 5th generation to live in the same house. I had a house in the Sierra, and it would almost burn down 3 years ago during the Aspen fire. And I'm speaking on the evening when you've all heard about the disastrous fire in Los Angeles. As I'm speaking on a Wednesday night, there's been 15,000 acres, 1,000 structures destroyed. Nobody knows how many people are missing. And how do we characterize this? Everybody's talking about the Santa Ana winds, climate change. I mean everybody, the people in power. But it was preventable. And once it started, this fire, it could have been assuaged. You could have had it lessened, that the severity didn't have to be as catastrophic. So I would characterize it as a DEI, Green New Deal, hydrogen, something out of Dante's Inferno.
Victor claims that under Gavin Newsom, it's not just policy failure, but a systems breakdown and a full civilizational collapse.
What I mean by that is it's a systems breakdown, a civilizational collapse. When you look at the people in charge, Gavin Newsom flew in to sort of do these performance art stunts, but he has systematically ensured that water out of the Sacramento River and the watershed of Northern California would go out to the sea rather than into the aqueduct. I each week drive about 425 miles round trip from my farm residence in Central California to Stanford University's Hoover Institution. And over the last 20 years, I've noticed that it's not just that the California infrastructure has got much worse as the population has incrementally increased to 41 million people. We have an infrastructure of the 1970s when we had 20 million people, and now we have twice the number of people driving, and the infrastructure is even worse than it was 50 years ago. And we may have somewhere around 100 million cars or 140 million cars, the estimates range, in California registered. But what I'm getting at is this. It's very dangerous now to drive on California freeways. There are either 2 lanes or 3 lanes maximum.
Victor asserts that it's now very dangerous to drive on California freeways with crumbling roads, rising crime, and reckless drivers turning them into hazards.
And we've had a new trend where truck drivers will get in the middle lane on a 3-lane freeway and just stay there. And then you have 2 lanes of solid truck traffic and only 1 lane in the left if it's 3 lanes for cars. And the truck drivers seem not to be as respectful of traffic as in the past. I bring this up because an illegal alien, a Mr. Singh from India, crossed over into the United States illegally in 2018, and he was ordered to leave. He came back. He ignored that during the Biden administration. He was issued a work permit that was revoked by the Trump administration later when it came in. But that's controversial. But what is not controversial, Mr. Singh, who could not read or speak English, essentially could only identify 1 or 2 traffic signs, for some reason was given a work permit, but more importantly, he was given a California driver's license, even though he was known to be an illegal alien and not proficient in English. And California thinks that as the home of the most illegal aliens in the country, a state in which 27% of the people were not born in the United States, and it has the largest sanctuary city infrastructure where they do not comply with ICE requests to deport illegal aliens, that it's unique and it's self-contained. It's not. People that it grants licenses to or residents to who are here illegally and are not familiar with traffic laws, they go all over the United States. So what happened this past week, Mr. Singh was driving a semi-truck in Florida, and for some reason he decided, a major thoroughfare, that he was just going to make a U-turn and cut across the divider and go in the opposite direction in the middle of fast-moving traffic.
Recently, an illegal alien made an illegal U-turn on the Florida Turnpike, causing a deadly crash that took the lives of 3 innocent people.
And so the inevitable happened. As he's making this turn, his own camera shows him nonchalantly looking around as a car has no choice but to hit his semi-trailers. And 2 people were instantly, the 3rd in the hospital. What was very disturbing was the expression on Mr. Singh's face. It was calm. He looked around. It was almost as if, oh, I made a U-turn, somebody hit my truck, I wonder what happened. He didn't get out and try to help anybody. He stood at the side of the road finally. But why was he driving? He was driving because California issued him a license when they knew he was an unlawful resident of the United States and he was not proficient in English, at least enough to be able to read rudimentary traffic signs and signals. In other words, 3 people, and he's now charged with vehicular because of the lax policy of California. What I'm getting at is when I drive, I see a lot of drivers like that. I don't know what their immigration status is. I don't know where they're born. All I know is that there are so many trucks on the California freeway. The infrastructure is so poor, and this generation of truck driver does not abide by the prior courtesies and policies of previous generations of truck drivers, that it makes driving in California an experience like Road Warrior or Mad Max. And the trucks dominate sometimes all the lanes for periods of time in California freeways. And more importantly, they drive outside of California. So Gavin Newsom is in a fight with Donald Trump back and forth, who issued him a temporary work permit. But I think Gavin Newsom, who champions the cause of unlawful immigrants, is going to lose that argument against Donald Trump, who tries to deport them. But more importantly, it's beyond controversy. Gavin Newsom's California issued this man a driver's license. This man was not a U.S. citizen. He was not here legally, and he could not read or write English, apparently. And the wages of that, we found out in Florida, were the 3 innocent people, and no remorse, no apologies on the part of California or Gavin Newsom. Bottom line, California is dangerous to itself in a myriad of ways, but it's also dangerous to everybody outside of California because its pathologies are not contained within its borders.